Hello, everyone. A few months ago, my partner, political theorist Fona Foreman, and I got a call from the Third Mind Foundation inviting us to be judges in an international competition to design a more efficient and more aesthetically pleasing border wall. in case Donald Trump will be elected. Not only the specter of this proposition is worrisome coming from a group of curators, but more troublesome was the way they finished the description. They said, "Let us be clear, we take no position on this issue. We remain politically neutral." To remain neutral in the context of today's urgent socioeconomic and political conditions is to be complicit with the institutions that have perpetuated what is ethically and morally wrong. Today, more than ever, we as artists and cultural producers need to take a political position against what is ethically and morally wrong. That inequality is wrong, that xenophobia is wrong, and that building border walls is wrong. Our incapacity to think socially and politically, in fact, is part of a period of antisocial, anti-public agendas that have not only decimated our collective social, economic, and environmental assets, but in fact have perpetuated unprecedented urban asymmetry between enclaves of mega wealth and sectors of marginalization, and unprecedented socioeconomic inequality. So today we must begin the conversation by exposing the conditions that have produced the crisis in the first place. We must visualize inequality. Emmanuel Saez and Thomas Piketty have produced the most compelling story on American inequality by visualizing two powerful lines that confront and mirror each other. Two peaks at the end, a valley in the middle, moving from the Great Depression in 1926 to our own economic crisis in 2006-2008. The top line measures, obviously, that at these 2 points we find the largest income inequality historically. But what is compelling about their study is that the bottom line measures that at those two very moments, we also find the lowest taxation on the wealthy. For me, this is a powerful visualization of the crisis, this gap, because it exposes the hypocrisy of the American dream as promised by trickle-down economics. If we detax the wealthy, we will all be better off. And I think that's the center of the problem. But we never talk about the valley, right? What happened then when FDR's New Deal and the Bill of Rights summoned cross-sector collaborations and synergies to invest in unprecedented ways in public infrastructure, public art, public education, public housing, public health. In fact, the public was not a forbidden word in our political language. So I'm talking about periods, obviously, of time when inequality is really based on the polarization of public and private interests. So the fundamental question today that I want to offer is, where is our public imagination? We as artists must demand a new public agenda, because a society that is anti-taxes, anti-government, anti-public infrastructure, anti-immigration only commits civic suicide. In fact, not only artists, but cultural institutions must take a political position, demanding a new political leadership that prioritizes public investment. This would require a double project, one that operates at top-down scales and at bottom-up scales. While we must continue investing in engaging the small, tactical gesture at the scale of the urban, we must transcend the pop-up mentality today. I think we also need to demand robust investments in public infrastructure and public space. So I think that this lack of interface between top-down resources and bottom-up agency only means a disconnection between institutions and communities. It's sad to witness, for example, that the extreme left and the extreme right in this country converge in their disbelief of government. As artists, we tend to jump in that wagon as well. We tend to be anti-institutional. I think today we cannot afford that any longer, because the project today is primarily an institutional project, the transformation of institutions. Artists can be, in fact, institution builders. This would depend on transcending this abstract notion of free imagination to, in fact, arrive to a more specific, urgent imagination. Or as Tania Bruguera once told me, let's restore Duchamp's urinal back to the bathroom. Because this means, in my mind, reconnecting art to an institutional dimension in one direction, but on the other to a more functional relationship with the everyday. As artists, we need to be facilitators, in fact, of new interfaces between the top-down and the bottom-up. We need today interlocutors of institutional memory to start stitching the missing information. Can we recuperate some traces from the New Deal? Where is the New Deal today? Where is our history of social activism in this country? This is a crisis of knowledge transference. And as we speak of social justice today, we need to understand that social justice depends on not only the redistribution of resources, but in fact on the redistribution of knowledges and the rethinking of public space, because public space is the place where knowledge is physicalized and constructed. It's not a space of leisure and abstraction. It must be a place, in fact, of contestation and debate. Public space needs to be retooled to build community capacity for political action. Public space to educate needs to, a la New Deal, summon a transversal curatorial project, synergizing the resources and knowledges from nonprofits, communities, grassroots organizations, universities, governments, even in the private sector, in a model of shared responsibility to co-produce programs with communities that can be injected into the abstraction of public space. So the physical and the systems of management need to be designed simultaneously. We need to activate, through a reconception of public space, arts and culture as agents of civic engagement. Because today, more than ever, we need to fight inequality and racist violence, not with police repression, but with community processes. Can we reimagine a citizenship culture based on mutual recognition, mutual respect, and dignity, organized around our shared values and common interests instead of the divisive identitarian politics of the nation state? We need to retool ourselves as artists. Our practices, in fact, are the ultimate site of intervention, transforming our own cliches, our own procedures, our own protocols and negotiations with others. This is what I told myself once when, as an architect, I said that the future of the city today depends less on buildings and more on the reconfiguration of socio-economic relations, and that we as artists could intervene in that reconfiguration. That urban conflict is the ultimate creative tool, in that we as architects Besides designing buildings, we could also design political and civic processes. In fact, to transgress the wall that has divided us. So let's not forget, as we demonize the border today, as the border has now become again the site of criminalization and polarization, the many communities between the US and Mexico border that have been marginalized through violence resonate. In fact, the marginalization of our communities across US cities today. So I think that today we must transgress urban borders everywhere by committing as cultural producers, as governments, to a more robust project of public investment to support and frame a new public education and public space and a new model of civic engagement. This is the only way, I think, to generate a new model of inclusive and equitable urbanization. Thank you.